Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they were the one who stabbed you in the back? My name is Sarah, and I thought I had the perfect best friend. She was my sister, my secret keeper, my other half. But little did I know, while I was busy dreaming about my future, she was busy stealing it from me. This is my story. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the revenge that no one saw coming. Emily and I had been inseparable since high school. I was the quiet one, the girl who loved books, soft music, and cozy nights. Emily was the opposite. Bold, charming, the kind of person who could walk into any room and instantly grab attention. Together we balanced each other out. Everyone used to say, Sarah and Emily are like sisters. And honestly, I believed it. When Michael came into my life, a tall, confident man with a gentle smile, I felt like I had finally found the missing piece of my puzzle. And of course, the very first person I introduced him to was Emily. She laughed, congratulated me, and hugged me like the happiest friend in the world. At least that's what I thought. From the very beginning, Emily's comments about Michael were strange. She would say things like, "Are you sure he's the one? He seems too perfect." Or, "Sarah, I don't think Michael deserves someone as sweet as you." At the time, I brushed it off as overprotective best friend behavior. I thought she was just looking out for me. But in reality, she was planting seeds of doubt, slowly twisting the picture without me even realizing. When Michael proposed, Emily was right there, smiling bigger than anyone else. She planned my bridal shower, helped me pick my wedding dress, even rehearsed my vows with me. People said I was lucky to have such a loyal friend, but I didn't know that behind that loyalty was a knife, sharpened and ready to cut me deeper than anyone ever had. The first red flag came in the form of a casual conversation. One of my colleagues said, "Hey Sarah, I think I saw you with Michael and another woman at a cafe the other day. Was that Emily?" I laughed nervously. No, that must have been someone else. But inside something twisted. Then another friend mentioned, almost jokingly, "Emily talks about Michael a lot when you're not around." Almost like, she's the one dating him. I forced a smile, but my chest tightened. No, that was impossible. Emily was my best friend. Michael was my fiancé. The two people I trusted most couldn't possibly betray me, right? I wanted to ignore it. I tried to ignore it. But then came the night that changed everything. Michael told me he had to work late at the office. His voice cracked just slightly over the phone, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Still, something inside me didn't feel right. My instincts screamed at me. So I drove to his office building. His car wasn't there. My heart started pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Where was he? I dialed Emily's number. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. And for the very first time, a thought crossed my mind, one that made my stomach turn cold. What if Michael is with Emily? I wanted to shake the thought away, but it clung to me like poison. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with fear. And the next day, I found the proof that shattered everything. The next morning I woke up with red, swollen eyes. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. Something inside me pushed me to check Emily's social media. She usually posted pictures of her late-night snacks, selfies with silly captions, or random memes. But last night? Nothing. Not a single post. That was unusual for her. I scrolled further down her feed and noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. Little details. A wine glass on a table that looked exactly like the one Michael owned. A reflection in the corner of a mirror that looked suspiciously like his living room. Tiny clues hidden in plain sight. My stomach dropped. I wanted to scream, to call her, to demand answers, but instead I stayed quiet. Something inside me told me not to confront them yet. Not without proof. So I did what I had never done before. I played detective. I went to Michael's office during his lunch break, pretending to surprise him with food. His secretary looked confused. "Oh, Michael isn't here. He left early to meet someone." My hands trembled as I forced a smile. "Oh right. Yes, I forgot." I walked back to my car, my knees weak. My phone buzzed. A notification from Emily. An Instagram story. I tapped it open. It was a boomerang of her clinking glasses with someone. The camera angle was low, but I froze. Because the wristwatch in the frame was Michael's. The watch I had gifted him for his birthday. I dropped my phone, my vision blurring with tears. It was true. The whispers, the suspicions, the gut feeling that I had been trying so hard to ignore. They were all true. Michael and Emily. The two people I trusted most had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. But instead of collapsing, something inside me hardened. My tears dried up. My sadness slowly burned into something else, rage. If they thought I would just cry and walk away, they were wrong. I wasn't going to confront them right away. No. I was going to make them think they had won. I was going to let them believe I was blind and naive. And then, when the time was right, I would expose them both. I started my plan that very evening. I called Emily, pretending nothing was wrong. "Hey, I miss you. Want to grab dinner tomorrow?" Her voice was as cheerful as ever. "Of course, babe. I'll pick the place." She had no idea that I already knew everything. The next day, as I sat across from her at the restaurant, watching her laugh and chatter about random things, I felt sick. Her smile, her fake innocence, it all looked so different now. And when she leaned closer and whispered, "You know, Sarah, I've always thought Michael wasn't fully honest with you. Be careful." I almost choked on my drink. The audacity. That night I made a decision. If Emily wanted my life, my relationship, my happiness, I was going to make sure she lost everything. Once I had proof, a dozen tiny details that fit together into a terrible picture, I stopped pretending I was surprised. I learned a strange kind of focus in those days. I stopped waking up with panic. I woke up with a checklist. First, I made everything about documentation. Screenshots were saved in triplicate. Timestamps were written down in a notebook. Any receipt, photo, or offhand text that implied their secret was copied and backed up. I created a private folder on a cloud drive I knew only I could access and labeled each file plainly: who, when, where, why. I was building not just proof but a story, one that would be impossible to call coincidence. Second, I tightened my circle. Betrayal feels smaller when you carry it alone. And it's harder to make it public when no one will believe you. I told Nadia, my oldest friend who'd seen me through breakups and bad haircuts, only the bare facts, and showed her a single damning photo. She didn't gasp or sob. She put an arm around me and said, "We'll fix this together." I asked her to be ready the night I decided to reveal everything. That small, steady we felt like armor. Third, I became surgical in the little ways. If they were careless, I'd be surgical. I learned their patterns. They loved late breakfasts on Sundays at a certain cafe. I learned which staff member would look the other way. I memorized which taxi app they used. I started leaving the house earlier so I could bump into them on purpose. Except I was never the one surprised. I took photos when I needed them. I recorded conversations when the law allowed it. I kept receipts and traced payments when money appeared for things that weren't a big deal. I also used their arrogance against them. People who believe they can't be caught are sloppy in tiny ways. Emily posted a photo of a compact necklace, an accessory she'd never owned, then liked a picture of Michael's new watch. They were careless in different places. I collected those carelessnesses like seashells on a beach. The plan began to take an outline in my head. It had to be public. It had to make the betrayal unmistakable. And it had to be timed so their instinct to gaslight or spin would be useless. An audience of people they respected needed to see the evidence before they could rewrite the story. There was one event coming up that fit perfectly: my bridal shower. Friends, coworkers, family, most of the people who mattered would be there. I could see them nodding and smiling, trusting the image they'd always had of Emily and Michael. What they didn't know was that I could turn that room into a courtroom. I started rehearsing what I would say. Not wild accusations. Statements with documents attached. I practiced the calmness I wanted to carry into that room. Anger is a soundbite, proof is a paragraph. But before I could stage the public reveal, I wanted to watch them in a private, undeniable setting. One where their words would betray them just as much as their actions did. I decided on a small test. I texted Michael 2 nights before the shower with a benign question about the guest list. He replied with something offhand, then he called quickly and I refused to pick up. He texted again and again, the messages getting more insistent. That was the moment I wanted. Push them into complacency, then catch the slip. I coordinated with Nadia to be at the same cafe on Sunday. I told her to sit in a booth with a direct view of the front door, and to pretend to write while watching people come in. She agreed, and on Sunday morning she sent me a single photo with the caption, "They're here." From a distance I watched Michael and Emily walk in, hands brushing like nothing was wrong. Nadia waved discreetly. I raised my phone and began to record, not from right on top of them but close enough for their voices to carry. Microphones pick up more than you expect. They sat, they ordered, and they spoke in the calm, coded intimacy I'd heard in their messages. I didn't need to hear every word. I needed one moment, one phrase of mutual complicity. 15 minutes in, Emily reached across the table and touched Michael's wrist. "He doesn't suspect a thing," she said, her voice low and nearly pleased. Those words were the chisel to my marble. I hit save on my phone with sweaty fingers and walked away. I let them be visible one more day, because visibility makes disbelief harder to sustain. After that, I focused on the legal aspects. I met my lawyer in a small cafe with thick walls and took a deep breath as I showed him the folder. He sat back, read a few lines and didn't look surprised. "You're smart to document all of this," he said. "Public humiliation isn't the only remedy. There are financial consequences if you need them." I nodded. The safety net made the public reveal easier to hold, to ensure I wasn't acting from vengeance alone, but from a place where consequences were enforceable. Then, to make sure their circle would see everything without room for denials, I printed copies. Wedding friends, family members, co-workers, anyone who would be at the shower got a discreet envelope on their seat. Each envelope contained a small note. "Please read this before the toast." Inside, a single page with a link to a private folder. The folder was password protected, and the password would be revealed on my phone right before the moment. On the morning of the shower, my hands were steady. I applied lipstick, not because I wanted to look pretty for them, but because rituals help ground you. I let Nadia help me with the final hairpin. She squeezed my hand and said, "You're not alone." The people arriving smiled, hugged me, and congratulated me. Eyes so hungry for a happy story they could taste it. That made the reveal sharper. When everyone had a glass in hand and the toast was about to start, I stood up. Silence crept instantly into the room. I smiled, then used my phone to share the password and the private folder link. 100 phones buzzed. People clicked. People scanned. Faces that had only ever seen me as the bright fiancé bride held by my best friend suddenly registered a faster pulse of disbelief as they opened the folder. There were photos of dinners. There were timestamps. There were receipts. There were screenshots of messages where Emily and Michael planned things in coded language and joked about how easy it was to make me so oblivious. There was the recorded snippet captured at the cafe, Emily's voice saying the words that proved deliberate deception. The room filled with a sound that wasn't applause. It was the sound of assumptions dying. Emily tried to laugh it off, the reflex of a person suddenly thrown into the light. "This is insane," she said, voice high-pitched. "These are out of context." But the password-protected folder had everything. The timeline made context impossible to invent. Michael, face pale, shuffled through the papers like someone searching for an escape hatch that didn't exist. I had planned the moment so it would be surgical, not theatrical. I wasn't there to scorch them into ash. I wanted the truth to be undeniable to everyone I loved. As people read, whispers turned into questions. Fathers, uncles, friends asked, "Is this true?" Aunts hugged me and cried. My mother's hand gripped mine so hard it hurt, but it was a safe crush of love. Emily's eyes met mine for a long, exhausted second. I did not flinch. She had the look of someone calculating whether to break down or to beg. She chose neither. She chose silence. That night after the shower, people took sides. But the damage had been done. The web of secrecy they'd spun unspooled in public. And when that happens, even confident liars feel the earth give way beneath them. They lost not only trust in my engagement, they lost an audience entirely. The silence after the reveal wasn't just silence. It was weight. Heavy, unbearable, like the moment after glass shatters but before the pieces hit the floor. Emily stood there, blinking rapidly, her mouth twitching like she wanted to speak but couldn't find words. Michael looked like he'd been drained of all color, a man who suddenly realized the foundation he stood on had been ripped out from beneath him. My mother was the first to break the silence. She stood up slowly, her voice trembling not with fear, but with anger so controlled it was scarier than shouting. "Emily," she said, "you were like a daughter to us, and this is what you do to my child." Emily's lips parted. "It's not," It's not what it looks like. That phrase. That tired, desperate cliché. The room exhaled in disgust. Everyone had just seen it was exactly what it looked like. There was no spinning, no context to save her. Michael tried next. His voice cracked as he stammered, "Sarah, please, let's talk about this privately." I cut him off. Calm, clear, unshakable. "No. You made it public when you lied in public. When you paraded around with her while pretending to love me. Everyone deserves to know what you've done." The room erupted. Whispers. Questions. Friends turning to each other with wide eyes, some shaking their heads, others outright glaring at the two of them. A couple of Emily's close friends looked betrayed themselves, as if her lies had burned them too. Nadia, steady as ever, stood by my side like a silent pillar. She didn't need to say a word, her presence said enough. Sarah is not alone. Michael stepped toward me, his hand half raised like he thought he could still reach me. "Sarah, I messed up, but you don't understand." "Don't," I snapped. My voice wasn't loud, but it sliced clean through the noise of the room. "Don't insult me with excuses. I understand perfectly. I trusted you. And you chose betrayal." Emily finally found her voice, sharp and defensive. "You're making this worse than it is. You act like you're some kind of victim, but maybe if you had been a better." The gasp that rippled through the room silenced her mid-sentence. That was her mistake. She tried to twist it back on me, and everyone saw it for what it was. Cruelty layered on betrayal. "Enough," my father said, his tone low and commanding. He hadn't raised his voice all night, but when he spoke, the room obeyed. "Sarah has nothing to prove. You two, on the other hand." He didn't even finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Michael's shoulders slumped. Emily's eyes darted from face to face, realizing the room had closed its doors on her. I felt my breath steady, like air returning to lungs after drowning. For months I had carried their secret like poison, and now the poison was out in the open. The weight was gone. The rest of the night blurred into fragments. Some people hugged me tightly. Some whispered apologies for not seeing sooner. A few cried, not for me but for themselves, for the loss of the picture-perfect story they thought they'd been part of. Betrayals break more than just two people. They fracture the trust of whole groups. Michael left first, shoulders hunched, his once proud stride gone. He didn't even look back. Emily followed, muttering to herself, her pride collapsing like a broken mask. Neither of them said goodbye. When the door shut behind them, I realized something. The room hadn't turned its back on me. They had turned their back on them. And that difference mattered more than I could describe. That night at home, I sat alone on the edge of my bed. The silence was different now, lighter. My phone buzzed endlessly. Messages from relatives, friends, even coworkers who had heard already. Some were supportive, some nosy, but all of them confirmed the same thing. The story was out. I stared at the mirror, really stared. For the first time in months, I saw a version of myself I almost recognized again. Not the broken, suspicious, exhausted woman I'd become, but someone who had faced fire and survived. Someone who had burned the liars with truth instead of letting them consume her. Did it hurt? Of course. My heart still ached in places I couldn't touch. Betrayal leaves invisible scars, the kind no one else can measure. But it wasn't destroying me anymore. It was fueling me. The next day, I woke up with my phone flooded again. Michael had texted. Pages of apologies, explanations, begging. The kind of words meant to pull me back into the cycle. It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. Please don't throw away everything we had. I didn't reply. I didn't even type. Instead, I archived every message into the same folder where I'd stored the evidence. Let him write his apologies. Let him write novels of regret. They were nothing more than proof of his guilt. Emily tried to. Shorter, nastier messages. Blame disguised as defense. You wanted this to happen. You're exaggerating. You'll regret making this public. But the truth was already public, and the truth is heavier than lies. Lies float away when exposed. Truth stays. Over the following week, the ripples spread. Friends unfriended Emily on social media. Coworkers avoided Michael. The story traveled not because I shouted it, but because betrayal always leaks. People talk. And when the evidence is undeniable, people believe. For me, the hardest part wasn't their downfall, It was learning how to breathe again. I had lived so long waiting for the other shoe to drop that when it finally did, I had to relearn silence without fear. One night, Nadia came over with takeout and wine. She raised a glass to me and said, "To freedom." I really laughed for the first time in months. To freedom, I echoed. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Revenge had been the fire that got me here, but freedom was what I wanted next. And as I lay in bed that night, I thought, maybe betrayal doesn't just destroy. Maybe it clears the path for something stronger. I remember that night so vividly. My phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "Don't wait up for me, working late." First, I didn't think much of it. But then something inside me stirred. Call it intuition, call it a gut feeling, but I just knew something was off. I tried to ignore it, telling myself not to overthink. But when hours passed and he still wasn't home, I decided to check his location on the Find My Friends app. He had shared it with me months ago, back when we trusted each other completely. And there it was, he wasn't at the office. He was across town, in a residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. My mind raced with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Who lived there? Why was he lying? Was I just being paranoid? I told myself, maybe it's a friend. Maybe he's helping someone. But deep down I already knew the truth. The next day, I confronted him casually, testing the waters. "So, how was work last night?" "Must have been exhausting, staying so late." He didn't even blink. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Yeah, long night. We had to prepare for a big presentation." That lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly it scared me. Because if he could lie that easily, what else was he hiding? I didn't push further. Instead, I decided to watch. To listen. To collect proof. For weeks I observed him closely. The way he'd suddenly guard his phone. The late-night work calls he'd take in the other room. The random bursts of energy when he was texting, smiling at his screen, only to quickly lock it when I walked in. And then came the night that changed everything. Mark was in the shower, and his phone lit up on the counter. I told myself, "Don't look, Sarah. Respect his privacy." But another voice screamed louder. "You already know the truth. Just confirm it." With trembling fingers I unlocked his phone. He hadn't even bothered changing his password. And there they were, hundreds of messages with her. Her name was Emily. The first few texts felt like punches to my chest. "I miss you. Last night was amazing. I wish Sarah didn't exist." Tears blurred my vision as I scrolled through their conversations. Pictures. Voice notes. Plans for the future. Plans that didn't include me. I dropped his phone, my whole body shaking. It felt like my world had collapsed in that single moment. When he stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, he saw me sitting on the bed, pale and broken. His phone still glowing with Emily's messages. For the first time he froze. "Sarah, it's not what you think," he stammered. But I just laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. "Oh really? Then tell me, Mark. What exactly do I think this is?" His excuses spilled out like a flood. "It was just a mistake. She means nothing to me. I was stressed, you weren't giving me enough attention." Each word was another knife in my heart. But here's the thing. While he was scrambling for excuses, something inside me shifted. The shock turned into anger. The pain turned into resolve. I realized in that very moment I wasn't going to cry and beg. I wasn't going to fall apart. No, I was going to make him regret betraying me. And that was the night my plan for revenge began. And that's how my story ends, with betrayal exposed and lessons learned the hard way. If you've ever faced something similar, remember, you're not alone, and your strength can turn pain into power. Broken Heart Sparkles. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more revenge and betrayal stories, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next story, where the truth always finds its way out. *.